I'll keep quiet, and you and Adhoksaja do it.
Yeah, it's quite freestyle. So if you want to chip in,
Okay, if I want to chip in, then I'll give him a nudge.
Yeah.
So, what's our theme tonight?
I haven't really thought about it. Have you got something in mind?
Okay, well, I've got a great one. The 4 regulative principles.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that then, because they're. I remember one day what you explaining to me that they're linked, and that the easiest principle to break first of all is intoxication. And once you've broken that principle, the other ones can come in very easily, because you lose your discrimination. And we're surrounded by intoxication. Even if we're eating food that isn't pure, there's a thing called gender benders, and you get them on the inside of tin food. And if you keep eating them, you change sex, called a gender bender. So if it can do that to your body, what's it doing to your mind? And people are walking around tanked up on gender benders, and they're wondering why they can't think straight. How are they going to be able to follow the regulative principles properly?
Wait, what's a gender bender?
A gender bender is when it changes your sex. So if you keep eating tin food and you're a woman, you end up with a beard. And if you're a man, you end up with extra paraphernalia.
Okay. Interesting.
Intoxication. So, yeah, intoxication comes. Meat permeates as well. Although it's not directly. They're saying now, made in an atmosphere that could come in contact with eggs and stuff. Jiv Jago was just talking about it recently, saying, everything is so contaminated now. So that has an effect on the consciousness automatically, unfortunately. And then illicit sex, it's everywhere you look. Every female walking around, she's been, what I think would be a good poster is you sew a piece of meat, with the lines on it saying pork, chops, shin, and then you show a woman's body and show how that's what they're making it out to be, like a piece of meat to be enjoyed, But she's dressed in a certain way, presented in a certain way, like a product,
Yeah, it's interesting.
So
if you go into nectar instruction, and like these regulative principles, they take place not just on the gross level, but they're more subtle. Subtle illicit sex and subtle. Even like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, isn't it saying like one certain type of dal is not vegetarian because it's got some protein in it? So I find that side of it quite because externally we're controlling, we're avoiding these 4 regulative principles, but maybe so many times in a day we're subtly engaging in them here, there, and everywhere. Especially if you go on Instagram or online, it's full of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how to break free from all that, and I was listening to Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying the yogis that are practicing yoga in the cities is a farce. They need to go and find a sacred place and chant there. So you have somewhere that's sacred, somewhere where you have nice pictures of the deities, regular Sankirtan, Harinamas going on to purge the atmosphere of all this. I remember one time we were traveling in a motorhome, and the partner that I was with, the last thing he wanted to do at the end of a day of Sankirtan was try and find a place to park. So he just dropped the motorhome off anywhere. So one night we're on an industrial estate. I couldn't sleep all night. When we woke up, it was in Great Harwood, and it was outside a slaughterhouse called Slingers. And they bump off about 800 a day. And I just couldn't sleep all night. It was like screaming going on, and anxiety and terrible fear. And then in the morning, there we were outside the slaughterhouse. So that's the energy that's permeating, the cities. And then we're going to try and sit down and do some yoga and get all peaceful. It's difficult.
Yeah. It's amazing. There are these subtle influences everywhere. You can't see it, but I've been listening to Shiva Maharaj's modes lectures again, and just the spotting how the modes are influencing us, and by contact with them, it affects our consciousness, and then it affects how we're interacting with other people. It's just you have to really be diligent to stay sattvic, and in the modern world you have to really stay on it, isn't it? Like keep that focus on
Utsanas Chatariat. We've got to be patient as well as being enthusiastic and confident then over a prolonged period of time. And when I first read patience, I thought it meant like 3 weeks. And then you start realizing, no, it means 30 years. So you've got to be patient. And then eventually you become purged of these tendencies and these attractions, and you come through into the stage of nishta.
So the 4 regulative principles, that's mainly to do with, like you hear Prabhupada saying, that's just being a human being. Like it's not even necessarily like spiritual life. Like you meet some people from India and they're like, I've never done any of these things. It's not even an austerity, but just goes to show how in the West we're so far away from actually being human beings. It's a big bad animal society, Vedically speaking.
These regulative principles, they're there for a reason, they're there to safeguard, even if like you say, even if it's not spiritual, just to safeguard your health. The regulative principles are there just so you can be a healthy human being in the mode of goodness, and then from there we can think about going into spiritual stuff.
And it's amazing how when you start following them, the thought of breaking them, or at least most of them, becomes a bit distasteful. Like in the purport to the 930, what's that? Prabhupada says that devotees are always careful to protect his wholesome condition.
Wholesome life, yeah.
And like you get, if you are actually following nicely and you're becoming more conscious, the idea of like eating meat, like when you go home at Christmas time and there's a turkey on the table, it's just like, oof, this is heavy duty stuff that's going on here. Whereas before you wouldn't have noticed it at all. Like,
and people's bodies smell different because if it's going in, it has to come out as well. So then it's very toxic what's coming out.
Even onions and garlic. There's some cats are pooping in my garden, so my dad gave me some pellets to stop them pooping, and it's onion and garlic, and it just makes me feel, it's just disgusting. Like the smell of onions and garlic is rough, and you can smell that, like people cooking with onion and garlic. It's like
you've got to struggle these days. You're looking in the shops, you're trying to get something, a sauce or something, and everything's got garlic, onions, all the crisps, all the snacks, all the sauces, everything. I mean, the amount of onions and garlic that must get consumed every day, phenomenal.
Why is it that we can't eat onions and garlic?
They stink for one thing, so that's not a good thing. They're supposed to be rajasic, but they smell more tamasic than just rajasic. But they create passion. It's more difficult to control the senses. I mean, most in the Vedic culture, before a person got married, he was celibate for 25 years. I mean, first few years he was celibate anyway, but then when he reached puberty, he was celibate until 25, and then he went into the Grihastha ashram. So there's a good chance then that you can follow the principles. But if you've been brought up and you've been breaking the principles systematically, and then for 2 years you're a brahmachari, and then there's you off in a house somewhere with someone in the Grihastha ashram trying to follow the principles, it's going to be really difficult,
Yeah. What's the top tips for that then?
Chant more. Or at least have one day where you chant extra. I find of all the things you can do to follow the principles, chant Hare Krishna is the most powerful thing. Prabhupada said if you're very disturbed, then you sit down tightly and you chant Hare Krishna until your mind is fixed on Krishna. So that's a good one to practice. Don't sleep in as well. Don't oversleep. When you're oversleeping, then the mind gets into all kinds of fantasies after a certain point. Your body rests after 6, and if you sleep after that, then you can end up having some wacky dreams. Stay regulated and get regular association of devotees who are already free from it, who've been brahmachari for years, or grihastas that have been following the principles for years. Their association is invaluable, because if you hang out with people that are also falling down, then it just becomes, probably everybody else is faking it. We're just being real,
Is this
Yeah.
the podcast now?
Yeah.
Had you go have something to say?
Yeah, he was asking me,
Is this the podcast now? Yeah. Uh-huh.
but he cuts bits out if they're controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, most people will, most sincere devotees will fail sometimes. And the point is to just pick yourself up and carry on. You know, it's not about like all, or it's not the end of the world if you break the regulative principles. You just got to get up and pick yourself up and get it back to real. But getting up early and being regulated is the key. It's the key. And regular association and everything nicely. But even then, this Kali Yuga, everything's very difficult.
Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani is a good book because it shows you how somebody starts to waver a bit and then he pushes on through. He just re-emphasizes his commitment to the morning program and all the things that we do. And that pushes him through, you know. So you have to sustain it. You have to be patient and persevere. And then you break through barriers and then suddenly the attachment isn't there anymore. And you can just move on, you know. It's interesting that the Grihastha ashram is considered more advanced than the Brahmachari ashram because everybody can fast when you're not in front of the feast. But if you're going to do it in front of the feast, then you do have to actually be controlled, you know, not just pretending in the mind. The mind's still dwelling on sense objects and you're just pretending externally. Yeah, so reading Srila Prabhupada's books helps us to chant better also. Gives us the inspiration to chant nicely. Before you can hear the holy name, you have to hear about the holy name. And that gives us the enthusiasm to actually want to hear the holy name, you know. And yeah, like Adi's saying, don't become discouraged. Because Rupa Goswami explains that the road back to Godhead is crooked and it's slippery because it's covered in kumkum and sandalwood paste. So sometimes it gets a bit tricky. And if you lose your enthusiasm, that's why you have to keep enthusiastic. And when you're not enthusiastic, just like it's a conscious choice to be enthusiastic, it's a conscious choice to be unenthusiastic. Although you may not think it, you may think, I didn't choose to be, I want to be enthusiastic. Well, that's just the trick of the mind. You could just suddenly spring up and say, wow, I'm going to be enthusiastic. Even though you don't feel like being enthusiastic.
Is there something you can do when that enthusiasm wanes? Because sometimes we get in those little ruts, those little kind of slumps, and even just chanting your rounds becomes a difficult task.
Yeah.
What's the, I guess, what do you say to yourself? How do you get back to that state of enthusiasm?
Well, Rupa Goswami refers to it as a natural relish. He says if you carefully do it, it's a natural relish that awakens in the tongue.
No, but he's saying we may have that natural relish, but then it may disappear.
Oh, yeah.
So then what?
That's why you have to do it carefully. It says if you carefully daily do it, a natural relish will awaken within the tongue. So sometimes it's just because you're not doing it as attentively as you should. You're skimming over it and you're assuming, well, I haven't got any taste, so what's the point? When you could still relish it. Because once you start relishing it, or you're chanting with relish, so then you're invoking the taste, consciously invoking the taste. Because the taste from chanting is actually the devotion with which you're doing it. So when you're not experiencing taste, all it means is you're chanting in a very kind of lackadaisical way. When you suddenly say, no, I've had enough. No. Focus. And immediately you can chant with relish. You can do that immediately. It's not that like, oh no, I'm not going to give you any taste because you were a rascal yesterday. As soon as you decide, I know it's a nonsense, I'm so sorry, please, I want to chant this with relish, with my full attention, with full devotion. Immediately the name reciprocates. So easily accessible by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. They've laid it on a plate for us, you know. We've just got to take it.
Like sometimes you've got to dig deep to get that feeling as well.
Yeah.
And you've got to be constantly remembering the good times and like keep reminding yourself what Krishna consciousness is and like why you're here, because it can be easy just to drift off, and then if you drift too far off, it could be dangerous ground, you know.
Every time you decide to be enthusiastic when you don't feel like, you may have just saved yourself a lifetime. Because what happens when a person leaves the movement? He loses his enthusiasm, and then he just allows himself to go on the slide, and then it gets lower and lower. Less enthusiasm, the less reciprocation, the less reciprocation, the less enthusiasm, and then eventually, that's it. Let's give up, you know. So when things are tough and you don't feel that there's any taste, that's when you have to be enthusiastic. It's funny, isn't it? We're thinking, oh, I like the idea of being enthusiastic. But what we're thinking is, I like being enthusiastic when I feel enthusiastic. But it doesn't mean that. Otherwise, he wouldn't be asking you to be enthusiastic. He's asking you to be enthusiastic because he knows, Rupa Goswami knows, you're not going to feel. And you've got to be anyway. So that's when you can really find out whether you're enthusiastic. Not when you are feeling it, but when you can do it when you don't feel like it. Then you know you're enthusiastic.
I find it interesting how a lot of these kind of concepts, when you read about them, they sound romantic. Like to be enthusiastic, to be humble, it sounds like it's going to be really fun. But actually, it's like you're crushed and you feel like you just feel devastated. False ego standpoint. So and patience and confidence, like in theory they sound beautiful, but actually the reality of it is tough. Real.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of devotees, they struggle when you're feeling lower than the straw in the street. How are you going to feel like you're cool if you're feeling like that? Thinking, I'm a pretty nice guy, really. I mean, I'm lower than the straw in the street, but I'm one hell of a guy. You're not going to be feeling like that, right? You're going to be feeling like, I'm an abomination, you know? I'm so unworthy. I'm so insincere. Somehow or other, I'm still, you know, so that's what real humility looks like. Got to embrace it, haven't we, Andy?
Embrace the humility or the fallen state.
The awareness of our unworthiness.
See, like Prabhupada said, failure is the pillar of success, and it's not like, it's like you said, crooked. The path's crooked. Means you almost have to get smashed down and make all loads of mistakes to then build again, to become more wise and more advanced. It's a kind of like, because we're not pure, you know, like pure devotees. Like I saw Keshava Swami join, and he was just pure from the beginning. They just chanted japa with taste every day, and he you could see he was just steady. Now he's a sannyasi at 39 years old, 40 years old. So he's special, and devotees like that are very rare. Most of us, we're going to make tons of mistakes. We're going to go through good times and bad times. But the whole point is what Krishna's saying is, if you're determined to come to me, determined to be a devotee, then I wipe away all your mistakes, the karma of those mistakes. Whereas a non-devotee, he has to take the full karma for his mistakes. Whereas a devotee, he doesn't, because Krishna says, your determination to come to me is the most important. So I'm going to overlook your mistakes. So we have to not worry about making mistakes. We just got to keep trying and be determined. And when you do that, Krishna's like helps you and you become more and more advanced. But we're not, Shiva Ramaj once said, this movement's not about following 4 miserable rules. It's about becoming
Okay, right, we're good, we're in.
Yeah,
so
it
did
cut
you
off
catch what?
Adhiguru Prabhu was saying that Shiva Ramaj said it's not about following 4 miserable rules, and then it cut out.
Okay, yeah. So the conclusion was, the whole process is to become attached to Krishna for real. And if that's the prominent thing, then, you know, when we're attached to Krishna and properly in our heart, then we will automatically be good human beings. We're not attracted to material energy. But in the meantime, when we're neither attached to Krishna, nor liberated souls, nor great yogis, nor pure, then we're going to make a lot of mistakes. But the overriding feature is not to dwell, to go forwards, keep trying, and keep getting transcendental knowledge, and try to be attached to Krishna and cry to him. The whole thing is chanting with sincere attachment. If we can really chant properly, then everything will be good. We'll really start to conquer the material energy. But that's the goal, you know.
Yeah, there's a nice prayer when you start doing deity worship. Just as the ground is the only shelter for one who's fallen, who's slipped, so you are the only shelter for one who's fallen, dear Lord. So he's always there, you know, he's always there to catch us and keep us going. If a kid was to give up walking because it'd fallen down a few times, then it would never learn to walk. So part of the way you learn to walk, for most of us, is that we make mistakes, you know, and then through the school of hard knocks, you start realizing, okay, that's not a good idea. Let me just stay up on my feet, you know.
Yeah. And
Would you say?
Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
You heard what I said about Swami, that Keshava Swami.
Yeah, Keshav Maharaj. Yeah. No, I was just thinking, like, a lot of us may get put off because when you come to Krishna consciousness, you naturally think you're more further along the path than you are. It's like one of those items from Madhurya Kadambini. Utsamaya, yeah. So, like, how do you overcome that kind of thing where it's like, oh, you get exposed as being less advanced than you are? How do you continue and with that enthusiasm? Like, what do you say to yourself, you know?
Well, Utsamaya is false confidence. So we want to replace false confidence with real confidence. So first of all, before you can give up false confidence, you have to become aware that it is false. So Krishna kind of gently breaks it to you that, you know, you're not actually as utsa as you're thinking, you know. But at the same time, you have got an opportunity to be if you want, you know. And then instead of just going by what you feel like, which is what the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is actually, you go from reactive, which is what you feel like, to proactive, which is principle based. So then you decide, I feel like kicking this guy in the face, but I'm going to pay my obeisances to him. So your principle overrides your feelings, you know. So that's where you realize you're not enthusiastic, but you want to be enthusiastic, and the fact that you don't feel enthusiastic is a minor detail. And that's what it is, you know. When we talk about Krishna consciousness, it's not some half-baked guy doing a sloppy, you know, like doing an arty and he's looking at his watch and then he's scrolling on Facebook and then he's offering. When we're talking about Krishna consciousness, we mean with full, you are into it. You are like so into doing it. That's what Krishna, you know, book distribution, giving a class, cooking a subji, cleaning. Are you in? If you're not into it, you're wasting your time. You know, it's like, if you're going to have to do it anyway, get into it. Do it. Otherwise, you're actually wasting your time. You go and do something else because you're doing this thing that's supposed to be done through. Krishna says, Sukam Kartam Avyayam. Are you joyfully performing it? Well, if you're not, it's not getting accepted, son. Sorry, you're just wasting your time. You think, well, I'm doing it anyway. Let me do it joyfully.
Yeah, my grandpa always taught me that if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well.
Yeah. Oh, I heard something else. If a job's worth doing, it's worth doing bad.
Huh?
Because the fact that you can't do it well shouldn't stop you doing it. If it's worth doing, even if you're crap, say you've got to lead the arty and you've got a voice like a foghorn, but it's worth doing badly.
Yeah, it's worth
just do it anyway. Just as long as you're enthusiastic, it doesn't matter how bad it is. If it's enthusiastic, Krishna's going to love it, whatever it is you're doing, you know.
I guess that theme links as well. It's like what you want, what you're aspiring for is more important than where you're at. Like,
yeah.
Like even if you're going to keep falling down and slipping, if you're fixed on that goal,
the intention.
that's what I appreciate.
The intention is more important than the result. That's why Krishna says in this endeavor there's no loss of diminution. He doesn't say in this result there is no loss of diminution. The result, we don't know. Could be so many things affecting the result. But your endeavor, you've got full control over your endeavor. So then if you can just get that together, you decide, say you just decided tonight, that's it. For the rest of my life, I'm just going to make a full-hearted endeavor, whatever it is. Then you'll be successful. Because Prabhupada says our enthusiasm is our success. So if you're thinking, like today I wasn't sure what was going to happen, I was a bit worried. Then I thought, well, I'm just going to do it enthusiastically. So I'm already successful. Same when Prabhupada came across on the Jaladuta, he may have failed, he may not have failed, but he was prepared to go on the Jaladuta, risk his life, and just do what his Guru Maharaj wanted. So he'd already achieved success. Whatever happened after that.
You know that idea, that sankalpa, that determination, you could just make, I'm going to give my full heart to this. What are the things which are stopping us from making that determined, like that determination?
Well, if you're weak, you may be weak, spiritually weak. It may take you some time to train. You know, you may be addicted to things. You may have unwanted things in the heart. Anartas. There's 6 forms of unsteady devotional service. There's niyama agraha, which is not being able to follow vows. There's vishaya sagara, which is fighting with the material energy, your senses. Utsamai, we've talked about. Tarangaranjani. People start thinking you're cool and hanging around you when you're on book distribution. Pretty ladies overawed by your charisma and your witty chat. So these facilities start coming along, you know, and you're thinking, okay. And there's a couple of others as well. Tarangaranjana, there's a Garala, sporadic endeavor. 1 minute you're into it, the next minute Garana Tarala. And there's one other one as well. So 6 forms. So until we get those sorted, that's 6 different ways our service will be unsteady, which means it'll slacken off and our enthusiasm will drop down and we'll be thinking, oh, we'll be dragging our feet a little bit, you know. And you've got to push through that, and then you start to clear, and then it actually becomes refined and it starts to become pure devotional service, you know.
So you know that at the level of Nishta, is it that you have that strong determination, like it's firmly rooted?
Yeah. Well, Nishta's Majjhima Adhikari, so the Majjhima Adhikari, he's not on the internet dealing with issues. He's out giving people books. He hasn't got time for issues. Issues are for Kanishtas. Majjhima Adhikari, he's out there, he's in the field, he's sharing the mercy that he's getting, he's fluent with the philosophy. If you're always out giving books out and preaching, you're getting preached to as well, so you're always good. You know, if you're helping other people up the hill, you're up the hill automatically. So every time you're out preaching, you're hearing it as well. Krishna's God, you're not the body, get out the material world. It's like, okay, great. We need to hear that. When we're preaching a lot of the time, we're actually preaching to ourselves. And Majjhima, he's out there all the time. And because it's a higher caliber of service he's rendering, his advancement is more rapid than the Kanishta because it's more consistent. So then he starts to taste Shuddhanam and gets glimpses of the Uttama Adhikari, you know. Then he's getting ready to start taking disciples.
Or you do a podcast every day.
Yeah.
And you're going to spend 1 hour preparing for that the day before. And then you got to do that 1 hour again for the next day. Kostuba and Raghunath, they do one every day, right?
Yeah.
And that would keep you on your toes. It's all about keeping you on your toes. And Shiv Rama did this one of his outreach things about feelings, that a modern society is obsessed with how you feel, and they're changing laws about people's feelings. But life's not really about that. It's about principles and you know, when the mother, if she doesn't feel like having a baby, feeding her baby, and the baby's going to die or scream, you know.
Or doesn't feel like having a baby and has an abortion.
Or the husband doesn't go to work that day, the mortgage isn't going to get paid. There's no, you know. So feelings are not important in many ways in spiritual life. So we have to act on these principles.
Yeah, reactive and proactive. So, and it's in these 7 habits. I think the very first one is be proactive. Then it's seek to understand before being understood, and start everything wherever you're doing. Start it with the goal in mind.
Goal in mind. Yeah. This is very important.
Sajja, The sadhana and the sadhya. So when you're doing the sadhana, you have to know what the sadhya is. Well, what is it that I want to achieve from the sadhana?
And what is it? What is the sadhya that we want from our sadhana?
Prasadam. Lots of prasadam.
No. Wrong.
Love of God, right?
Okay, but what? Be more specific.
Like in the mood of the manjaris.
No. And we're going to go back the other way. I'm going back the other way.
To escape the cycle of birth and death.
Not that far backwards. I'll tell you. The goal of the sadhya of a sadhaka is to get to bhav, which is bhav is generally translated as intense or very intense mood of devotion for Krishna. Spontaneous devotion for Krishna, or the awakening of real love. So if we have that goal in mind when we're doing sadhana, then that's good. And then in bhav, once we get to that bhav, then there's a whole long way to go to prema.
That's just the door opening.
That's just the beginning. But I mean, once you're there, you're finished with anartas, nivritti is all gone. You know, all the traces of it's gone. Almost. There may be a tiny bit of trace still there, but.
So Satyanandan Swami said that the first signs of Shuddhanam is you start feeling affection, you chant, and you're feelings of affection are starting to well up in your heart whilst you're chanting. So that's like the sun's not over the horizon, but it's almost, you're getting a glimpse. Just a few rays are coming over, you know, and you're starting to get a glimpse now. And then you're thinking, this is going to be amazing. So you try to invoke that affectionate feeling that the Lord is there. He's come in the form of his name. He loves me. He sent Srila Prabhupada, all the acharyas, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, so kind. And then Shuddhanam's like, okay, I'm going to start coming your way, dancing on your tongue. Shiva Raman, I told you this the other week, didn't I? Raman was saying, devotees think if they can hear and chant, they're doing well. And he was saying, the holy name's going to dance on your tongue, and it's going to touch your heart and dance in your ears. That's what it's supposed to be. So that's the sadhya. So don't just settle for a second, but at least I'm chanting. I didn't break the principles practically yesterday. I'm doing really well, you know. That's not the goal. That's not the sadhya.